Reality TV, brainwashing kids, people doing bids, hurt kid apocalypse, what's going on? What's up? Welcome back. You are sitting here with Revolutionary Addictdotes. My name is Blue Nile.
I'm Angie.
It's Angie.
Just Angie.
We your hosts, and welcome back. This episode 4, and we're going to be talking about sober sex and ancestral alchemy. Ooh.
Okay.
Yes. And for me, obviously, we'd like to talk about sober stories, and this whole podcast is sharing how we've healed our trauma, how it showed up, the trauma responses, and getting sober, and like how life has truly transformed because of it. And sex is a big topic because when I first got sober, I thought fun was done. Okay. I thought that I needed, especially as a queer person, but I used to sleep with guys. Like, I love all people, but I just you know what I mean? From trauma, I think, and I was taught that men were perpetrators, unfortunately, which is hard to undo. And being perpetrated, it's just women just flowed easier with me. But every time I needed sex I needed sex. I needed alcohol to sleep with men,
right?
And even with women, and at first it was like, how am I going to do this without the drink and the drug? And so I think it's a great topic to dive into. What you think?
Yeah, I mean, my experience has obviously, been different, being first generation here, and being part of the African diaspora through asylum and stuff. Just coming from a very strict. No one talked about it. You were shamed for it. There was this level of being pure. It's really fucking weird. And it was the women were perpetuating it, and so were the men. And so it became very secretive, and it was alienating because when you're naturally just in touch with your own sexuality, and then it's demonized.
Yep.
And then it's then there's the mix of abuse. It gets kind of murky.
So murky. And just, I want to share, as a woman from the entertainment business as well, and coming from these male-dominated industries, well, her fashion, whatever, it's patriarchal. We're in America, and hello, it's built for the white man, but men in general, women, as we've had to fight for our rights to live, to not just be a house working homekeeper, but Billie Holiday, who unfortunately died of cirrhosis of the liver. One of her quotes, she said, "You can be up to your boobies in white satin with gardenias in your hair and no sugar cane for miles, but you can still be working on the plantation." And I think that is so poignant and so on point with a woman who was trying to own her sexuality, getting arrested, for singing her song "Strange Fruit" about our black bodies being hung from trees, and the alcohol and addiction took her under, because she had to go she had to go in the colored people's entrance. She had to, the things that she fought for, and that right there is a woman in her power, right? In my power, owning my sexuality, but still working on the plantation.
And then even taking it back, she's definitely iconic, and then taking it back to, I feel kind of, we were talking about where it kind of started.
Yes.
Because I think it's important to kind of go into the history of it and how, black people, they were traded.
Yep.
We were traded. We were commodities. They profited off our bodies.
Yep.
And they treated us like, animals, basically. And so one person comes to mind. Her name is Sart G, but they call her Sarah Baartman. So I think she was literally the first episode of colonial racism and exploitation. So she was basically, a 26. She died at the age of 26 from alcoholism and syphilis. And basically she was taken from South Africa and actually traded by her master, who was half black, half white. And he took her to London because he knew he could make money off her because she had such a distinct body, and especially African bodies, the beautiful, robust, the wider hips and the butt and the breasts and the color, everything's fascinating about, black bodies in general. And so she was taken to London, and she was just put on display basically. And men could basically buy her, and white women would come in and just poke her. I think that's what makes white women touching our hair, or just kind of coming up to us and invading our space.
We're fetishized, and this affects our sexuality, which that's like a Sarah Baartman, and this affects how I react as a black woman, mixed race black woman, but like I was raised around like I'm black, you know what I mean? And the white woman who fetishizes the black man and
And
us,
yeah,
like you said, Mandingo,
the
and
Mandingo
like,
character, there's all these characters,
yes,
and I think
yes.
it's interesting because they called Sarah Baartman, what was it, Venus Hottentot, and so the word thought comes from that.
These
It's
slave
like
names.
even the language that we're still using today
Yeah.
is very indicative of our history and
The
how
white
painful.
psychosis.
Yeah, and then basically what ended up happening is after her death, the French and the British basically kept her body for 200 years. And then when Mandela got out of prison, he was like, bring her home. Like, bring her home. You don't get to just dissect her body like an animal to study her and then not bring her body home.
And the whole Kim Kardashian thing, she got dragged for that, like, because white women are fetishized for the big booty, right? The butt implants and all this stuff, it's like, yeah, but then as a black woman, like I shared, I booked this modeling job one time for this just jean company, and I was at the fitting, and at the fitting, they fired me. I was so skinny at the time. They fired me because my booty, my shape. I wasn't a stick figure, but yet when the white woman wants to have the big booty, it's fine. But when the black girl has the natural big booty, you want to fire me?
Well, yeah, because it's not. It's interesting. My therapist was saying like about Kim Kardashian in particular, which I don't even want to give her airtime.
But she got dragged.
But
it was necessary.
But it's very poignant into like what we're trying to talk about is like they basically profit off our features. They profit off our
lip injections.
Our hairstyles, everything.
And no shade to that. Like, do what you want.
It's fine. Do it. But also that society deems it acceptable on a white woman.
Yes.
Right? Like, and then all of a sudden it's like the body movement. No, man, like that's not the body movement. Like African women have been looking like this since the beginning of time. But because there's this demon, like black sexuality is demonized, it's been, they get to take it, chop and screw it, and then make it a commodity, right? And sell it to the masses.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you shared about where you come from, it's like, the shame and the blame, and even in a society which we fetishize violence, right? Like you can watch a rated R or these video games with this violence, but don't show boobies. Like Janet Jackson has a nip slip and she's freaking demonized. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like we are taught that our bodies we should be ashamed when that's not how in Europe and other countries. Like that's some American bullshit.
Yeah, we were all walking around like.
Well, maybe not all countries because your culture, but sometimes like you're talking about like the Islam and like African cultures who dismember our clitoris. Like we getting real here, like so that women cannot have pleasure. Like, come on, y'all. There's a thread going on with our sexual lives. This is
And I want to speak on that a little bit because I think that's very important. I actually spent a lot of time like writing my thesis about female genital mutilation and like trying to work with. Activists to kind of put an end to it.
Yes.
So literally 200 million girls all over Africa have been mutilated in the name of purity, right? So not to get too graphic, but
it's real.
What she basically said, like they either, cut the pleasure part off or and they sew you shut, right? So when a man comes to marry you, he knows that you're here, whatever.
Ugh.
But the like astounding thing is it traces back to the transatlantic the slave trade, where they used to mutilate women because they were their property, and so it's like all these things date back to one another, and it's I think it's still happening in Egypt, Ethiopia, Somalia. And it's like we're talking about 90%
to all black women, but not to white women. Hence why as black women, like, I feel some ancestral trauma that I might not even be present about today, but naturally my body, it's shameful. I feel my lineage. Like everything is energy. Everything is energy. And unfortunately, the white person doesn't have that in their lineage. Like they're just free floating, like you said earlier, free love, free body. Yeah, that's nice. Not my experience.
Right. And like the free love, like being able to be like a groupie, right? Like getting on buses and just like, and it was just like, it was acceptable. Like it was just that's how you rolled. But Black women could never behave that way
unless we had drugs and alcohol.
Exactly.
Hence
Ding,
back
ding,
to
ding.
so like Billie Holiday, using new like oh that man, just her whole story I resonate with. You know what I'm saying? And even like so many more people that have died because of the pressures of the world, being a woman on display. And like, I know myself, I had to drink and use to be on stage, to like get through that. I needed cocaine to pull me out. They would bring it to me, and just so that I could keep being that show, perform, black, you know, perform, monkey, perform. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's just how it felt. And I was definitely in the music industry. They didn't care about me. My mental health was awful, and they just wanted me to keep going. Like Whitney Houston, what happened to that poor baby and her daughter? Like, come on, y'all. This is real.
The cycle continues. And I also think like for women that are, you know, lending a voice to like the first generation, like African immigrant thing, it's like you don't even matter. You don't even exist. Like you don't exist. So anything you accomplish as a woman, anything you accomplish, anything you try to set out to do is not it's not respected unless you are married, right? And then it brings up this other topic that I was talking to you in the car about. I actually am like living this in real time, so it's kind of like fresh. But you know, my uncle, who I talked about in other episodes, whose son basically was my abuser for a couple years, he circulated this post of me. He somehow found a picture of me in a bikini, like which. The last I checked, bikinis weren't fucking illegal in the U.S.
Right.
And circulated it with like this post about God knows what, just basically assassinating my character and shaming me as a woman, right? And so that was like a big deal to my family.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I didn't care because whatever. I mean, not that I didn't care, but I lived my life. Well, and I'm in recovery, and I'm a sexual being. Like I don't have to explain that to anybody, but. It's like the things that men do in this culture to silence you. And that was like, it was right when I came out about the abuse. Right? And then 3 weeks later, this thing goes, you know, and it's basically like, because he called me a whore first before this all got circulated. He said, you and anybody who it happened to, you guys are just all whores, right? And so I had a little talking to with him.
Hypocritical insanity.
But I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, even the women, like there were multiple women in my family that I saw it happen to, that I kind of ran interference with. And when I came forward, they were like, yo,
silenced.
You better not, because we're married. And if our husbands find out that like, you know, some shit went down, like they'll divorce us.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And then other ones that were like on the potential of getting married were like, yo, dude, like, I'm not going to speak on this because I won't get married. No one will marry me.
It's so sad.
And so, yeah, it's like caused, but the great thing is like I was able to meet women like you.
Yes.
And other women in recovery that were witnesses to that, right? They were able to witness me in that way and be like, yeah, I mean, everybody deals with it differently, and you're, you know, I've always, I guess, been different. I've always like been an outlier, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable in that.
Yeah. And it's like we found our chosen family.
Exactly.
The loving witnesses, where it's like there's a saying, it's like I don't go to the hardware store looking for a loaf of bread. You know, and like that's what my nuclear family, that's what we can say because we know each other's story. You know, it's like I'm not going to go there for the compassion or the loving witness. No, I'm going to be gaslit. I'm going to be made feel insane. I'm going to be met with all of this resistance and shame. It's not where I go anymore. It's not a safe place for me. And thank God, hence, the recovery has allowed us to find these safe places so we can unpack and have a healthy, thriving sex life and have, you know what I'm saying? And create a partnership in with myself in my own body. Like, I hear all that you just shared, and same for me. Like, I was met with the gaslighting when I finally told my mother what happened to me. She was like, how? It just still makes me laugh. And I love and respect my mother in all love now. And this is just my story, and we have power in sharing our stories. So it is what it is. You got to make good with it. And but my mother having her pimp live with us, you know what I'm saying? I was violated at the age of 7. I was beat. I was like so much. That was my first introduction to sex, right? My mother taking me to strip clubs, like being young and seeing all these titties in the locker room at the strip club, like meeting with the owners and like saying, you have a future here. And I'm like, I don't want no future here. And then thinking,
No,
like,
thanks.
I resonate with the pimp. I'm going to be a pimp, not a hoe. This is just a child trying to make smart decisions.
And
this is my life, y'all. Like,
that's a smart decision.
For me, that was the smartest coming from where I came from. You know what I'm saying? So therefore, it's like I needed drugs and alcohol. My sex life wasn't even thriving. I was shut down because I wasn't taught that my body was safe. My body wasn't even mine. When I finally had consensual sex, it didn't even hurt because why? I wasn't a virgin and I didn't even know it. This, you know what I'm saying? Like usually as a woman, it should hurt the first time. It didn't. My trauma was blocked until recovery. All that came back until I moved to Los Angeles. I had to get far away from the East Coast for those memories to even come back.
Yeah.
What? That's
we
insane.
You compartmentalize it.
The brain, man. The brain is like, there's like acute trauma and there's chronic trauma and there's complex trauma. And I have it all because acute can be from one instance, right? And it traumatizes you, you know. Complex is like everything, you know, like.
Yeah, it's everything. And it's also like it's everything. It's everything compiled into one. And then you are out in this world and you're subject to like, you know, the male gaze, but in particular, like the white male gaze. And it's like everything is under scrutiny, you know?
Please.
And it reminds me of that thing that we were just talking about like Don Imus, you know, when he was kind of,
there's so many Don Imus.
I know there's so many Don Imus, but he was basically, what was he like? What do you say? He was voicing it was like a basketball game. So
I forget exactly what he said, but
anyway,
he said he said
well,
the ghetto or the welfare hoes or something.
Well, it was a Rutgers university. It was a basketball team, and he was like, "Look at those nappy hoes," right? And just like candidly just drop that shit on air. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, even they do it with Serena Williams. They've done it with Michelle Obama. They've done it with black women in general, where it's like, what in you thinks that you can have that type of commentary about a black body or a brown body or a woman? You don't get to. That's like some old school slavery shit.
Well, yeah, that's a systemic racism because unfortunately this country has been built for the white man. Like I remember being in the labels office. Like they don't look like the music industry ran by mainly white Jewish people. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'd be in these rooms at this table with these big record labels looking around. I'm like, why am I staring at all these old white men? Like, what do they know about hip hop? Like, I'm so confused.
We go back to being we're commodities.
Right. And with the one black tokenized man, you know? And I'm like, I'm so confused.
Sigmund Freud's cousin, actually, was invented this kind of concept of like public relations, right? So he would take things from different communities and like make it capitalize off it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what's been happening.
Absolutely.
It's nothing new under the sun, you know, but...
No. And capitalism is the number one religion of America. You know what I'm saying? Besides, like, obviously, the old Christianity, but people worship money. Hence, like, the whole, I'm not even going to say what happened with the 45. You know what I'm saying? People that vote for 45, voted for him. He's fired. I won't say his name. But, like, they worship money. Like, even black people, like my friends who are just millionaires, right? And they're like, no, the tax cuts. I'm like, this motherfucker is a racist. And
and not only that, like, I was reading some article a while back, and it was very random, but it was talking about how, how, you know, Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion had that song, whatever, the WAP song. And they were like breaking it down. And then, you know, somebody said to them, like, you find that song so problematic. And again, these are artists creating their thing. But
they're owning their sexuality in that way.
Exactly. But he was like, you know, you have a big problem with the song, but the president said, grab him by the pussy.
Hello.
Like, so it's not okay
when a black woman
for
says
black
it.
women
right.
to express themselves in whatever way they want. But the president can say that and still do a full term.
The hypocrisy, you know what I mean?
Well, that's white supremacy.
White supremacy.
And the symptoms of white supremacy are addiction.
Yes.
Right. Also, a lot of like abuse.
Well, trying to keep us in our corner, keep us down. You know, they're honestly, it's like, that's why it's white psychosis, because they're terrified of us. Yes, we're stronger, we're faster, we're more talented. We're just genetically inclined. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh no, we got to keep these, and you got to keep them enslaved. It's like, no, guess what? Those years are over. Those days are over. You know, yes, it's still happening, and it's a slow change. You know, for the pay rate. You know, it's for women and men, and like for black men. it's still in the entertainment business, still get paid more than women. You know what I mean?
Oh,
If you're, it's like
that'll
still
be
a patriarchal thing, not a color thing.
Right.
But the black man probably gets less than the white man. You know what I mean? But still, it's like it's all an old system that we must dismantle.
Well, and I think it bleeds into what we're also talking about. You know, the sober sex thing of it affects the relationship between the black man and the black woman.
Exactly.
Right? And it's that thing where that's kind of where things get murky.
Yeah.
Because there's so much trauma from slavery, and there's so much trauma from watching, and even though my lineage does not trace back to slavery,
yeah,
there's been girls are being kidnapped and trafficked.
Yeah.
When I was there, I remember like walking down the street and people didn't know I spoke the language, and just kind of getting like these this backlash, and it was like, yo, I can't even be in my own like land, and like just
because
be
you had
free.
your arm showing.
Yeah, like I had my shoulder showing.
The shoulder showing.
And I was like, yo, dude, like if that's problematic to you, like there's bigger shit here.
It is hard, and like we talked about that too with like women and having like the Islam and like the nation. It's like we're already oppressed, and then we choose to oppress ourselves more. What?
Well, and again, like,
and it's no diss. These are just my opinions.
Yeah, I'm gonna preface it with like like there are parts of Islam like Sufism and stuff like that. Dope, whatever. They're all, it's fine. But
we're talking about feminism. We're talking about equality.
I'm talking about colonizing a nation and oppressing women in the spirit of that, and then treating black and brown bodies, especially of women, as like you can rape your wife in Egypt. You are not so a man is 1 and a woman is 1.5. Like it's 1.5 to be like even like, so basically if somebody dies and there's an inheritance, you don't even get 50%. You're just not a human being.
That's so sad.
So, and I think that this trickles over into what we see today.
Of course.
You know?
Everything trickles into everything, you know? It's like everything. As a woman, and if I'm an aware woman, especially coming back to recovery, like I don't get the luxury of having some pills and some Xanax to just numb out and not feel like a bad memory that might pop up, like because I'm an addict, right? I might black out and die. I might eventually do heroin because I drink and I break out in cocaine. And then one night might be cut with fentanyl and I might die, like it's happened with multiple of my friends up to date in Boston. So I have to stop. I stopped it before it was already bad. I needed recovery from 17 to 21 so bad, but I had nobody in my life to show me. And I'm not a well-to-do white person who had the luxury of going to some treatment center. I didn't even know about a treatment center, okay? And it's just jail was my repercussions in the streets. So I moved to New York, which is crazy. But I had to get away from my trauma in Boston. And I found my way in a different way, my self-will, you know, but moving to California, and it's like, holy crap, like all these people, like there's treatment centers everywhere. And like finally realizing that I got to walk into a 12-step program because of a therapist. And I got to stop it before I finally died. Like I was already wanting to kill myself with drugs and alcohol because of the trauma that was coming up. And I didn't even know it. You know, my body would seize during sex sometimes. And I'm like, why? How do I be free? But then the best sex nights was when I was wasted. I don't even remember them, but it was great, right? Because like, it was just an act.
Well, your soul's not there.
Right.
Your soul's not there. You're
because of alcohol.
Yeah, exactly. Your soul's extracted. You're like, you know, and again, that's why they talk about like shit that people do when they're blacked out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that also lends a voice to something that's also important. I think the trauma that you saw growing up, from,
which trauma?
You know, with the father figure in your house, and the domestic violence point of it, because I think that this is really important, especially when I go talk to young girls. I definitely, especially young girls that are basically facing some sort of jail sentence, and they're in this rehab, and I see them. I've actually sponsored quite a bit of women that was their story. You know, that it was literally like alcohol and domestic violence, you know, and having those two things being deeply intertwined, and you not thinking that there's anything wrong with that, and you're normalizing it. So I was like, I was raised by my aunt for a little bit, and her they were both alcoholics, my aunt and uncle, and it was like you just see them rage. And I remember being behind like these blinds, like in a, you know, the toy room, and like just watching it. And then anyway, so all that to say is, And I remember thinking, like, how could you stay with somebody that puts their hands on you? You know, like being in judgment of her, like being in a really, really harsh judgment. Like, you know, if somebody ever touched me like that, it would be. And then here we go, like a couple years, I mean, in adulthood, I find myself in a situation that didn't classically look like domestic violence, but it never looks classically like it, right? And I was telling Nicole, there was an incident where I was on my balcony, right, in my home. And I have a window that like kind of faces me, and I wasn't wearing a bra. I was like in a t-shirt. I wasn't wearing a bra. And like, I don't need to wear bras like that if I don't feel like it, then that's your like, body, that's my your shit. Choice. Yeah. Like, it's hot as shit. I wear a bra all day and see how fucking uncomfortable you are at the end of the motherfucking day.
And you're in your house.
Yeah, I'm in my house. I was drinking at this time, and I remember being like, whatever, on the balcony, and you know, the dude I was with at the time was like, go put a bra on. And I was like, yo, what? I'm in my house. And anyway, it escalated to the point where it got violent. He basically grabbed me by the throat and pinned me up against the bed. And I remember being like, do it. Like, I was so just drunk, and I was like, I didn't care.
Right.
But I lend a voice to that to say that alcohol permeates all parts of your life, and it subdues you to a point where you think that type of stuff's acceptable, and it's not acceptable.
Not at all.
And then in recovery, you're able to kind of, in your fourth step and like just in the discovery phase, find your power. And it was like, I remember when I was sober, and like he kidnapped my dog.
Oh my God. And
I remember being like, yo, this is so far fucking gone. But all that to say is like, it didn't, I don't want to say it initiated me into my power. I see it for what it is now.
Yeah.
And I do also see that he, you know, my sponsor was like, you put everybody in context.
Yeah.
Right. He, and again, no diss, like he went to go work on himself, and that is what it is.
Yeah.
And I have no parts of that.
Yep.
But also the context being, coming from an alcoholic home, having an alcoholic father, being in Al-Anon, and being a black man who hustled for the majority of his life, because that was the only thing that he knew how to do. And even though he was out of that game for a minute, it didn't change it, right? It didn't change the dynamic, and he was bringing it home to me, and it was unacceptable, right?
Absolutely. And for the simple facts is, we cannot accept that behavior because we're perpetuating back to you and your power. Like, honestly, it's unacceptable. But until we're finally sober to heal, because I perpetuated my pain in multiple relationships until I finally, if I'm toxic, I resonate with toxic. I attract toxic. People want to blame. He did this. He did this. You did this. You did this. No, honey. Why did you attract them in your life? You know? Right. So that's where we see you taking your part, and we get to see our parts in recovery.
And alcohol, like getting rid of that is just. I remember my sponsor being like, you know, you're gonna. I don't think you can be in this relationship sober.
Yeah.
And I was like, of course I can't be in this relationship sober. Like. And then that birthed the whole, like, you know, sex is alchemy thing, right? Like you can find yourself in recovery and like be comfortable.
Yeah.
And like, sex is intentional.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. Going from when I first started getting sober, and again, like all of the inauthentic sex encounters, which were chemically driven to be good, but really were they? Probably not. But when I finally got sober and I got out of a toxic relationship, and I thought I was going to be sexless and funless, but then that's not what happened. I worked on myself and I started loving myself, and then I got to, you know, find an energetic match to the now healed me, and have incredible sex and not need a damn drug, just some tea, some water, you know what I mean? Like, because now I'm in my power. Now I see my part in all of the past and what people did to me. I perpetuated that by allowing them in my life. You know, I'm no longer the victim. Now I am, and I'm no longer surviving. I'm thriving, and I'm thriving in everything that's happened to me. So I alchemize myself sex life. And it starts with me too. And it could be uncomfortable for women to talk about masturbation and all this stuff. But guess what, honey? That's the highest form of bliss. That's how we manifest. That's how, like, I love myself. Like a doctor says, an orgasm a day takes the pain away, you know?
Is that the new one?
No, I just said, like, somebody said that. Somebody said that. I was talking to, I think, Laura or somebody, and she said her doctor had suggested that she, you know, masturbate, have an orgasm a day, like, keeps you young. And I was like, I agree.
Okay.
I agree. And
like,
there's this little sex toy called the womanizer, you know, put it in a plug for all you women out there. It will help. Okay, because a man, you know, they get to do that, and it's easier for them. It's just because they are, everything we just talked about, the ancestral, the indoctrinated, you know, sexism, right, of women and men. You know, men, and they're glorified, they're looked at, you know, for the black men and the mandingo, but a woman, don't please yourself, put your clothes on. But you know what I'm saying?
Well,
so
it's the Jezebel. It's like the Jezebel thing of like, you know, showing a part of your body's tempting and it's inviting something. But yeah, just to piggyback off what you were saying, we were talking about like sex being alchemy, and that like you can reach levels of your highest self through sex, and like our ancestors have left that blueprint. Like when I even look back at like ancient African, Egyptian cultures, like where women were revered and regarded, and they were like goddesses, and they were queens, and they like
owning their sexuality, they owned having multiple having orgies, you know,
and kicking it with no bra on,
right, naked,
like
some grapes,
do you,
some fruit, like some leaves,
and but so comfortable, and knowing that like sex in communion with somebody was like you know, it was healing for the soul. Like all that trauma and stuff that has happened early in life can all be completely reframed,
transmuted,
when you're in a situation, and when it's done right. Like we learn in recovery that there are like steps and boundaries and autonomy and all these things that bring us back to ourselves, so that we don't even end up using others or whatever the case may be, you know, or indulging our addiction in another way.
Yeah, but it all starts with me. It all starts with me finding my part and how I perpetuated my pain. Like I talked about earlier, when we come and do the 12 steps and they talk about my part in sex trauma, I got pissed and I was like, I'm out, you crazy. Until I had to do some more research and some more digging and be like, oh, wait, it's like an onion, it's layered. The deeper thing within that is, oh shit. Now, because I was taught that men were predators, and now because I have I'm basically, my perpetrators are on a throne because they're running my life. I have to dethrone my perpetrators and now heal the way I look at, you know, I have to go out to the macro, not the micro. I have to zoom out and see that not all men are that 1 or 5 men, that not all people will harm me. I have to feel safe within myself.
Right. And once that's what Leah said. Like, I mean, my sponsor, she was saying like, you're safe now.
Yeah.
So like you can go out in this world and just, you're safe. You don't, you're okay now.
Yeah.
Like you've done enough work, and you have enough sobriety under your belt to go out in the world and trust the decisions you're making.
Yeah.
And I feel that. And I also feel like, like they talk about a spiritual awakening, like there's a sexual awakening too.
Yes.
And
sexual, physical, mental, emotional, it's a pie of life, y'all. We need the balance.
Yeah, exactly. And that it's still part of it, and that using alcohol to numb out and like leave your body during whatever, there's no intimacy. Like,
no,
it doesn't. You're not able to.
Or like the revenge screw, or like the you know, the playing the game, or like women are taught to like. Remember, my mother would be like, a bunch of the Celtics, like back in the day, like wanted to date me. I never wanted to date a celebrity dude because, again, I adopted the male perspective. I try to be more macho, and I'm like, nah, you ain't gonna use me. I'm not gonna be a notch on your belt. Like I'm gonna. But then I wanted to just date the famous women. You know what I mean? I was like, no, but it was just fucked up. But then my mom would be like, why don't you date these Celtics players? They gonna pay for everything. I'm like, dude, because I ain't that. I ain't the hoe. I'm not gonna screw them for money. But that's what she was trying to always put on me.
Right.
You know?
And then it brings up that thing we were talking about. Like, men are not ATMs.
Right.
Like, men are not, they're, you know, they're, how do I say it? Their purpose on this earth is not to provide financially or be looked at as like, oh, go date this dude because he can kind of like fund your whole lifestyle.
But that's the systemic funding, the systemic setting of, you know, the women stay at home, do this, the men go get the job. Women weren't even allowed to work in all gender, in all cultures, white too.
But that's why no one. I mean, that's why there's not a lot of like profoundly, you know, well, there are. I won't talk about it in general, but it's hard to have a deep connection with somebody when you're like banking on, or you're like the foundation is, well, you got money.
Oh yeah.
Or
no, it's inauthentic.
Yeah.
The agenda.
Well, and it's doing the same thing that men do to us, like where it's like, well, oh, you don't look a certain way, or
right.
It's just a double. Right. It runs both ways.
Right. The point is just us being in our power. You know what I'm saying? And like, when trauma is involved, like to become and thrive and to alchemize the ancestral trauma of sexuality so that I can own my power, love my body, like love and accept my body as I am, like that is a revolutionary thought. I don't know about y'all if you've ever looked in the mirror or looked at yourself and hated yourself, but I feel like 8 billion people have on the planet. I think it's normal. I think that's the way it is. Right. So to look in the mirror and be like, I love and accept you as you are, and start owning that, and want to get fit, not because of to fit some mold, but to be healthy. Like that's what I've been changing the way I look at, but because being a mixed girl and being fetishized and being put as the lead because I'm light skinned, light eyes, and then them hating me, and then the producers freaking assaulting me and molesting me, and being in these industries and having these men with so many expectations because they're putting me on, and their expectations are for my soul and my sex and my body, you know, like that shit, like this is what we've been coming up against.
And the like gymnastics of it. Like I was watching
gymnastics. You're right, we acrobats.
Maybe this will get bleeped out later, but it was like
no
the Russell
bleeps,
Simmons, the Russell Simmons shit, like with, you know, a woman, she was telling Russell. Her story about just being a hungry executive and like being really good at A&Ring and mastering tracks and like had a lot of success, but it was like dodging him on all levels. And I totally resonate with that. It's like all you want to do is just create, and you want to you know, travel, you want to see the world, and you can't because you're kind of like dodging this dude, this predator, and then there's another predator.
Everywhere.
And so, and then, you know, again, like, but it's that type of stuff too. Like you can't, and then you shut off.
Yeah. I stopped dressing feminine because I got so much attention. Like when I'm dressed feminine, like that's what made me be more tomboy, to be truly honest. Cause I love both. I love myself. I'm a very diverse. I can switch it, you know, do the tomboy, do the super feminine, whatever. But when I'm tomboy, less men talk to me. It's easier.
That's how I started dressing in the office. They actually had a meeting with me. They were like, could you like not wear hoodies and I'm like, don't tell me.
Could you go jump off the bridge, please?
Yeah. Don't dictate to me.
Man.
You know how I should dress, and because there were these two like white girls that would come in and they had like short shorts and they were hippies and it was all like light and free and I was like, yo, this is not no.
Yeah, no. The point is like we are, you know, it takes so much work, and I'm so grateful that we both are sitting here to just share with y'all, like, look, I can own my power, and this is what it looks like, you know. June Jordan, who is an incredible activist Black woman, she says, sometimes I am the terrorist I need to disarm. Okay. Amen. And that's deep. You know, she was also queer, like mixed, like she was shunned, and her story is another one we'll get into another time, but I really resonate with that because I was the own terrorist against myself, and I needed to disarm myself, and to do that I needed to put down drugs and alcohol, and then I could live, okay, because I was putting myself in these situations and relationships where I was getting assaulted. I was assaulting myself, you know, like just harming myself.
And then letting that inhibit you, right? Like letting that be the thing that like, again, like talking about sex, like that is the highest, you know, it's the highest form of self-expression, right? Yeah. Yes. And it also leads this way to like creativity.
Yes.
So now if I'm coming from this background of like abuse and stuff, like I can't really even enjoy anything. Like, because if, like, say, for example, like, if I wanted, like, whatever, what if I wanted, like, to be dominated, right? Like, it doesn't, now, it no longer feels like it's coming from a place of abuse.
Right.
Because it's been integrated.
Exactly.
And it's like, now it's like, no, it's like, I get to like what I like.
That's
like,
a great point,
and it can bounce back and forth, right? Instead of looking at it like, no, like, you know, again, the gate of like
perpetuating that trauma. Like I resonate with that. Like, you know, because I would talk to, remember when I was younger and I would talk to some of these sex workers, and I'd be like, do you sure you want to do this? And they were like, yes, I love sex. I didn't resonate with that because I didn't love sex yet. You know what I mean? But then some of them were just like in so much pain. I was the worst. I was the worst freaking pimp in my life. I was like setting it up, and then I was like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, you really want to sell your body? And they were like, yes, I love sex. I love money. And I'm like, okay, cool. Go do it. Let me sniff another line, drink another bottle. I can deal with this situation, right?
Oh, man.
Yo. But then, like, I had a nervous breakdown, y'all, because that was so not authentic with who I am. I literally almost died because it's just so not in alignment with my soul. So that's the journey. Like, thank God it wasn't, right? Because I know people, and it's fine, no dig. Like, if you're consensual and you're choosing to be a sex worker, that's amazing. But if you're forced to or manipulated, and like, then it's a whole different situation, which I think my mother's story was. And I've asked her, actually, I'm like, did you choose to do all that? She was like, I'm pretty sure I was manipulated into loving it, like the power and the money and the Rolls Royce and the 70s and the 80s. And like, I'm like, look, that shit's crazy,
Yeah.
And you get glorified into that. And now my mom, she's never experienced really that owning her power at all. She's powerless. And I was powerless too until I found recovery. And now I am powerful. Like, I admit that I'm powerless over drugs and alcohol and sex and people and food and fame and everything to gain my power. And now I'm powerful.
Yeah.
And
you're sovereign. Like, you're autonomous. Like,
yes.
Now I get to call what I want into my life, and I get to behave in ways that serve me, and not feel like, well, I should, like, all that shame shit, like, that's all done. That's big.
And we don't have to Kill Bill our way out. Like, I was thinking about this because, like, I was thinking about Kill Bill, right? This is how my mind works. Because I used to be that. Like, I want to assassinate everybody. I'm revenge, right? Like how she came. Yeah. She was raped. She was beat. And things that happened to her in the hospital, they killed, like, she came back with a vengeance. And that is a trauma response, okay? Kill Bill. You want to learn about trauma? Watch Kill Bill. That's what happens, okay? But we get to come out of that and not Kill Bill. We can, move to the graceful. I know for me, that's been my journey from Kill Bill to still, okay, calm. I don't got to kill nobody. I don't got to kill myself.
And you can sit with yourself and, like, really, like, harness that energy that you want to, and that there's no shame in that. Like, it no longer dates back to, being objectited.
Yes, the
ancestral
Alchemy.
Like, exactly. You get to make decisions. Like, again, I mean, the fourth step for me was really powerful in that sense, because I got to see, like, the columns of,
and seeing the patterns of, oh, I do this, oh, I'm doing this when I first meet someone, oh wait, I've flirted with this person to get that, or like the attention seeking, the validation seeking. Like, I get to learn all my little ticks that I naturally wouldn't learn if I wasn't being meant to do column work. Like, what is my part? What is this? This is why 12 steps are amazing. And you don't get to this. And if you start a 12 step and you don't do all 12 steps, then it's like you're missing out on the miracle. Like, at least complete all the 12 steps and then make a decision. Because, like they say, you can always take your misery back, honey. Like, it's easy. Yeah. It's yours.
And the fear inventory. I think the fear inventory is also, like, key. Because, what is blocking you from intimacy? What is blocking you from having that connection with someone?
Yep.
What? And then how does that, like, look in your life?
Yeah.
Like, I know I shut off creatively for a hot second. Yeah. Because I was like, I'm good. Like, and just reconnecting with that, it's empowering.
It is empowering. And it's like the efforts to heal ourselves. Like, what do we do? Like how are we trying to heal ourselves? And the first is this discussion. Like, I feel so grateful that I can come here and just share with y'all. Like, we decided to share and be honest and be vulnerable. And like, Angie, big up to you. Like, I love being your sister and your witness, because coming from that ancestral, like that culture of which she's still currently in. Like, I ex my family out. I ain't got they're gone. But she had, you know what I mean?
I'm
like
about to
face that and to stand in your autonomy. And I'm watching you own your power, and I just want to big you up, because it is so inspiring and it's so beautiful to watch. And it's just like, okay, it reminds me why I'm doing this too. It's like, okay, cool, we can do this.
We can. And like, I don't want to perpetuate this trauma anymore to anyone. To like, it stops with me. I see the ramifications of it. Like I was telling you in the car, my aunt just got a dementia diagnosis.
Yeah.
And the dementia diagnosis comes on the heels of years of alcoholism and years of domestic violence. And same thing with my uncle that just recently passed. He was a bona fide alcoholic, and now in his death, all these secrets are coming out.
Yeah.
And the way he lived his life, and just how dark shit got, and the poor decisions he made, you know, when it did come to relationships with women.
Yeah.
And like it just got murky,
Yeah.
you know, and again, seeing a lot of infidelity.
Yep.
And seeing a lot of men living these double lives, and like that's okay. That's them. That's
you're
their
breaking the
shit.
chains.
I'm breaking
like,
the
you're
chains.
breaking
Like
that ends with
yeah,
you.
it ends with me, and I'm very
Your
clear
lineage.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Same. And that's why I would love this. I want to be an advocate for women in their power, for people in their power. That's why it's no diss on Islam. Choose what you want. But I believe women should have the power to enjoy and have pleasure and live their lives, not hidden. You know what I mean? Like, and that's my personal opinion. All respect and all love. I just want, as a woman, I fight for women. I call me a feminist, whatever. I am then, because that's how the life changed. Like with the Glorias back in the 70s, you know, and I don't really know much about them, so I'm not going to really credit them because I think there's probably some controversial things with them.
Yeah.
But they did do a lot for the women movement. You know what I mean? And like I think that's as I stand on their shoulders. I also stand on the shoulders of my past selves, who was weak, and I almost died from 17 to 21 with no one there for me. Right. You know, just on the streets with these gangsters and pimps trying to find my way out of what I was born into. And what did I use? Drugs and alcohol. Was my healer, was my best friend until it wasn't. Until finally it was like, all right, bitch, I had to move 3,000 miles away. It's like, you need to heal now.
And I think a key thing I'm like hearing you speak is like, sometimes we've become our oppressor.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Like, where did it got so murky? Like, now we're oppressing one another.
Yes.
And,
yes.
you know, and we're seeing it in real time where, you know, we're doing it to one another, and I get it. Like, how could we not do it to one another?
That's
all
we
we know.
Yeah.
But, you know, hopefully we're turning a tide where we can start cultivating, you know, Black families and community, and getting back to the roots of it.
Yeah.
Like what started with, you know, our ancestors who had these amazing civilizations, and like family and sex and all that stuff was all integrated, and no one felt shame, and like Mott was the whole thing, right? Like living the way of Mott, like the reciprocity, the balance, the truth, all of that,
these
like
principles.
And again, principles. Back to, that's the beauty of recovery too, your principles. And you take that in all your affairs, right? So you conduct yourself, you know, in a respectable manner.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, like that Maya Angelou quote, it's like, when you know better, you do better. You know, like I didn't know. That's why, like, unfortunately, like my first initiation into sex was seeing this and hearing my mother have rough sex with this man, and him walking by my room, seeing his big penis, you know what I mean? Like, because my door was open, just inappropriate. You know, that scarred me when I saw that big thing sticking out of his hips. I'm like, ew! I was so young. It was terrifying. Yeah, I mean, that's sexual that's a form abuse.
Of abuse. Yeah.
Like, and not even knowing that, and like having these strippers around. And I remember my mom would be like, how did me being a prostitute affect you? And I'd be like, and that hit me so hard. And she didn't even get it because, look, bad things happen to my mom, and I love her so much, and I give her so much, like, and I just now was able to be like, look, Mom, I'm sorry for everything that happened to you, you know, like, because she was traumatized, you know, she was a hurt child herself who my Nana, unfortunately, abandoned her, you know, like, let her get arrested and then get bailed out, and then just let her go live with, you know what I mean?
It's the lineage. We see it.
So breaking that cycle and breaking that, okay, when I know better, I do better. And having the courage to do this, even though at first it pissed my mother off. It pissed our families off. But guess what? This is my truth. And I hope that we inspire you to tell your truth, no matter whose feelings it might hurt. Because eventually, you know, I can say it now with respect and graceful. But before, when I first started, like, I was on like the X Factor and like all these other shows, I told my story. They were like, cut her out. She is too raw for television. Like, Middle America cannot handle this girl.
And again, it goes back to the reality of the Black woman's experience, right?
Yes.
And it's funny hearing you talk about your first exposure to sex, because mine was literally like, my dad had found my pipe or something. I had been smoking weed, and he was waiting for me, and so I walked into the door, and he was like, yo, what is this? And I was like, weed. And he was like, well, where'd you get it from? I'm like, it's yours. I got it from your desk.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, what do you mean you got it from my desk? I'm like, I just took a joint from your desk. And like, I also took some like, shake and I put it in my pipe.
Wow.
And he was like, he just stood there and he was like, all right. I just need to have this talk with you. So would you prefer driving a used car or a new car? And I'm like, a used car, I guess. Like, it saves money. He's like, wrong answer. And I was like, I don't know where you're going with this, homie.
This analogy?
The analogy was being a virgin and not being a virgin.
That is
right.
That's interesting.
And he was like, and literally he got so fucking annoyed and was like, just don't tell your mother you found my shit. And then like walked out. And that was like how. That's just how we rolled.
Yeah,
like, if like a sex scene came on TV, my mom like nosedived to get the remote.
Oh yeah, same.
It's like,
which is weird.
Which is weird. Like, what, why?
Or maybe not same. I don't remember, but it's something. It's just hypocritical. It's just crazy.
And now literally, it's just a bunch of like sexually frustrated women in my family that are like in their 70s.
They sleep in orgasms.
And oh my, yeah, the rage is like, this is years of like not being in your power and not like,
so sad.
Yeah, like choosing a partner that.
We're laughing because I like to make, I like to keep it light and I like to joke and kid.
Well, it's funny. I mean, it's kind of funny,
you know?
Like, it's like, that's the only, I mean, come on, man. Like, even the way they met, they didn't know each other.
Yeah.
Like my dad picked her.
Yeah.
Like from like the village, village lineup.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's very like, I'll take
deep.
you. And then they got engaged, didn't know one another. Then got like married 6 months after, and you wonder why you hate each other.
Right.
Like I can tell you why.
Yeah.
And then she comes here with him, right? And again, the immigrant story. He's not coming home. He's out drinking. He's out, fucking Barbara.
And that's a lot of man story.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
that's just
yeah.
not
Like,
immigrant. Like
that's a lot of.
Like we talked, I just did one of my poems was featured on our friend's podcast, Only One in the Room with Mario Van Peebles, and he was talking about how as a black man, like, hello, we weren't even allowed to be fathers. Like, think back to slavery. Like, so come on, we have a lot of work to do when it comes to the father showing up.
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense when he said that. I was like, wow, because my father, I didn't know him till I was 8. And he was a weekend dad. He wasn't there for me for nothing,
Right.
He tried to be my good friend at the end, and he died. And he apologized to me. He kept apologizing the year he died too. Like he knew he was gonna die, and it's just sad. Like what our dad, they can't show up for us.
Like my dad, yeah. Like there's no, even though he was present, he was always living a double life.
Yes,
or checked
exactly.
out.
Mine too.
And now it's really interesting though, because in recovery, it really floors chauvinistic men from like that society that you actually have a fucking brain.
Oh, Lord.
Like the stuff that's kind of like happened in light of my uncle's death again, like at first they were like, who is this stupid little dumb girl? Like why is she even involved? Like why is she doesn't know shit about shit. And there's still that
sexism.
That energy of like anytime we meet with a lawyer or a realtor, it's like, they're gonna, you don't really know what you're talking about. I'm like, I got this. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Fall back. Like
patronizing.
Just because you are a man doesn't make you any more intelligent than I am.
Yeah.
And that recovery's allowed me to, act with intention, with everything, to think everything out, to see my motives, and just, and being like sovereign. Like I don't need to be a man to be intelligent.
Yeah, and then learn to insert ourselves. Like I hear you, like you want to insert yourself, and you with confidence, and then coming up to that backlash again. It's just difficult because it's us owning our power for the first time and having to constantly reinsert ourselves. And like that's the name of the game. Like persistence is the price we pay for transformation.
Yes. Persistence,
and it gets hard. Like we were just talking. I'm like I have affirmations all over my room. Like I am empowered. Like I am safe. Like whatever it is, I am worthy. Like and I'm willing to give up the need of not being worthy. Like. Even deeper, when we're lived this way for so long, then that kind of comes how my brain works. And I have a need to be a victim. I have a need to be lower or less than. I got to realize that that's my shit. And I have to change all those old beliefs.
Right. And that we are, right?
Yes.
Like the shit that I found unacceptable in my family, through recovery, I was able to change.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that thankfully my nephew will never have to know any of these people. He'll never have to be abused by them.
Yep.
He'll never have to be picked apart.
Yep.
Or commented on, like whether his skin color, his hair, nothing.
Yeah.
The way that we were kind of picked apart.
That's right.
And that's the gift of sobriety. I think that you go into the rooms, you think you're just putting alcohol down, and your life is radically changed.
Yeah, radically. It's a revolutionary thing, hence why we decided to name this Revolutionary Addictdotes. But yeah, I don't know. I hope that we said something that would be helpful to somebody, and just know that you can reach out, and you can even reach out to us, and we can share our stories with you. And like my whole thing is to just look, I'm telling my story. This is how I went from survivor to thriver, from broken to broken open, and to now owning my power, to having incredible sex and being I'm being confident in that, and being a lover to myself, most important. And then I could be a lover to someone else.
Exactly.
And do it without drugs and alcohol. What? But at first, I didn't think it was possible, but it is my life now. You just got to hold on. I'm coming on 4 years. I have 4 years, no alcohol, but 4 years, August 30th with no weed as well. So, I don't know. You want to say anything else, Angie?
No, I just think that we've come a long way, from sitting at that coffee shop.
It's a marathon.
Racing. And we've dealt with a lot of stuff head on, and we've come out the other side. And the last thing I'll say is that I think that there's power in sharing our stories. And that's how we liberate one another, right? Like, I can't liberate you if I'm not liberated. And I can't fully be human if I don't integrate my sexuality in a holistic, healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I'm so proud of you.
I'm proud of you, too.
Oh, I love you. All right, y'all. Tune in next week, and we'll see you soon. Peace and love.